WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Nick Austin. Today on the program, we'll take a look at the efforts local school districts are making to support student mental health later this hour.
But first on the Metro, the bus. And just because this is the Metro, we're not talking about transportation. If you know that nickname, you know we're talking about Jerome Bettis. The Detroit native became a football legend for his toughness, running through tackles and scoring touchdowns when the ball was placed either near or far from the end zone. Now, one of the things the Hall of Fame running back is doing is helping kids, parents, and coaches navigate the world of sports. In partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of Southeastern Michigan, he will be hosting a youth sports conference from the 24th to the 25th during the NFL Draft. Some big names in sports will be in attendance, including sports writer, reporter Adam Schefter, and Barry Sanders, another NFL Hall of Fame running back. To discuss that conference now, we have Jerome Bettis here. Jerome, welcome to the Metro.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And we have Sean H. Wilson here. He's the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Southeastern Michigan. President Wilson, welcome to the Metro.
Good morning.
So, Sean, you have been busy at the Boys and Girls Club. Now you're getting ready for this first youth sports conference. What is the conference and why?
Yeah, so the 3C Sports Conference, it's 3C Sports is a program of the Boys and Girls Club. It's basically the umbrella of all of our sports programs and sports leagues, including, basketball, football, strength and agility training, all of that good stuff. And we wanted to really maximize the opportunity of the NFL draft coming to Detroit to gather our youth athletes, our parents, and our coaches, and provide them with some, world-class workshops and knowledge that will help them maximize sports even more. And so, Jerome Bettis and myself, we've had an opportunity to collaborate in a number of ways over the years. And, this was another opportunity. I know Jerome has an authentic passion for helping the youth of Detroit, serving the youth of Detroit. And so I reached out to him to see if he wanted to do another social impact project together. And we're grateful that he said yes.
And Jerome, the NFL draft, of course, is happening here in the city of Detroit. You're working with more people, like Sean just said, connecting, making sure that you're giving back to kids. You're a Hall of Famer. What does the game mean to you, and why do you think it's so important to extend that love to kids?
Well, the game means everything to me. It was for me, it was my way to facilitate a college degree, a career that I was really good at, come to find out. And so we want to try to provide that same opportunity, but we want to do it in a much different way. And we want to show that from a sports perspective, it's about the kids. And so many times now it's become, the angry parents, it's the coaches that are using the kids as a stepping stone on the bigger and better things. And we just want to bring it back to the kids and show that, hey, this is a sport that it lasts a lifetime, because it's not football lessons that you learn. It's life lessons that you learn. And so we want to try to, bring that back into focus. And so this creates a great opportunity. We've got some incredible people on these panels that will be able to shed some light onto some incredible issues that our kids are facing, that our parents are facing, and that coaches are facing in this landscape that is now football on every level, from youth to college to professional.
And Jerome, when I think about, you talking about doing it a different way, doing the getting into football, getting into youth sports a different way, especially now when we see the way the camps are run and different programs, and it's a little bit harder for kids to access some of the sports now. So how does a conference like this, or how does you getting out there talking to the community help bridge that gap and get kids back into youth sports?
Well, it just shows them that at the highest level, it's still about youth sports. I mean, so many times you look at it, you can look at me and say, "Oh, he's a Hall of Fame football player," but I can tell you where my roots started and where the opportunity started, where the love of the game started, and what every kid will have an opportunity to benefit from. And so I think that's the purpose. That's my purpose, right? To show people. Let's take it from the Hall of Fame, from the NFL level, and let's shrink it back down to the true essence. And that's where the benefit has always been for me, and I think it will be for all of the youth that play. Because what people have to understand is the lessons that we learn in football, they're not football lessons, they're life lessons. So we need to continue that, and now we'll have a new generation of young kids and our youth that get those same lessons, and they're able to take forward. And for some, it could possibly change their stars and their trajectory in life. And you never know where they could end up. They could actually end up being a Hall of Fame running back that won a Super Bowl in Detroit.
Yeah. Hey, Jerome, Nick Austin jumping in here. I was just struck by something you said about the role that sports plays with our youth, because parents can take it so seriously and, playing 3 sports in high school. I remember how they said, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Winning is everything. But if we instill that kind of promotes those parents thinking it's okay to admonish refs. I just have to get the W versus the other benefits that we can have in sports. How would you recommend for you doing it at the highest level where money was involved versus for high schoolers where it's about other things? How do you balance the want for wins versus the other benefits that we have for sports?
Well, that's what this is all about. Trying to bring that to light, right, and show that there's the different perspectives that there are in that category. Because that is a huge issue, and the unfortunate part is the kids are being overlooked in this whole process, right? And so that's what we want to try to shine a light on and say, hey, this is not right. That's not. It's not the purpose of this youth football is for betting or for parents to get after other. It's about the kids, right, and their growth, their personal growth. And so we want to try to shine a light on that. And I think the only way that you really combat that is from understanding, is from conversations, right, and it's from talking, and that's making it a priority. Because if we make it a priority, then at that point, the powers that be said, you know what, this is not the right thing to do, not the right place to do it, and let's honor these young kids.
Jerome, my last question to you, you grew up in the city of Detroit, went to McKenzie High School. Talk about how Detroit influenced you and continues to influence who you are and how you want to give back to the Detroit kids.
Detroit is where I'm from. Obviously, it shaped and molded me into the person that I am today. And so I wouldn't be, where I am without the city. And that love affair is still there with me. And I want to do everything I can to try to encourage, try to motivate, to try to inspire that next kid that's in Detroit to say, hey, you can do it. And it's not your surroundings are the issue. Your surroundings create the benefit. And that's what you want to try to show.
Thank you so much for that. Sean, before I let both of you go, tell us a little bit about the event happening this week, the 24th to the 26th, and what kids should know and parents should know about it.
Yeah, so it's we only have a few spots left. The opening night reception is sold out currently. The conference itself, we only have a few spots left for it. The conference is free. You just have to request a invitation to come to the conference, which you can do at bgcsm.org. And we're going to have a lot of amazing workshops that really hits on a lot of what you guys were just talking about, because the truth is a big reason that youth sports has gotten to where it is that it's become over monetized. It's really become a business built on the backs of our youth. From national rankings for 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds at certain positions, which I think is ridiculous, to, everybody's a personal trainer now, charging kids X amount of dollars to come in and train, and then really outrageous youth fees, right, to actually play. And so when you look at what 3C Sports is doing, we're attacking all of that. We have the most reasonable youth league fees in the Metro Detroit area. And then, as an example, this conference is free to youth, parents, and coaches to come and get the knowledge that they need to really turn youth sports around, disrupt youth sports, and take it back to the basics of what Jerome was just talking about. We need to instill that passion and that drive in our kids.
Sean H. Wilson, President and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Southeastern Michigan. Thank you so much for being here on the Metro. Same thing, Jerome Bettis, co-hosting the Boys and Girls Club of Southeastern Michigan 3C Sports Conference. Jerome, it was a pleasure to have you here as well. You both have a great day.
Thank you.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET, and coming up, we'll talk about how mental health support staff have helped Michigan students and what it would mean if funding for that staff went away.
Welcome back to the Metro right here on 101.9 WDET FM. Right now, sunshine, 55 degrees. Nick Austin, you're here.
It is true. I am here. This isn't AI or virtual Nick Austin. You get the real one.
Real deal. Real deal.
Oh, that's my time to talk.
Oh, yeah, it's your time.
Oh, I can do that too. A lot of people are struggling with their mental health, including clearly me right now, Tia. But according to the U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, Americans are battling an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. This has hit teens particularly hard. Many say that they are isolated and disconnected despite, or possibly because of, the social media platforms they're using. And that's why the state of Michigan approved a $240 million 2021 program to help schools hire more counselors, social workers, and psychologists. And they did just that, hiring 874 mental health support staff. But now that funding is at risk of running dry. So to discuss what that might mean for students and how schools are trying to keep this program going, we have two superintendents with us. Erik Edoff is a superintendent for Lance Creuse Schools in Macomb. Erik, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you.
And we're also joined by R.J. Weber, superintendent of Northville Public Schools. R.J., welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's start here, and I'll start with you there, Superintendent Edoff. What are the emotional difficulties students are going through right now that you've just seen personally from your perspective? And considering your history doing this, how is it different from maybe when you got started here?
So I think the needs are very broad and difficult to define at times, and I think one of the hallmarks of mental health needs that schools face now are how they're starting at such an early age. It's not just older students struggling with relationship issues, home life issues, mental health issues, but it also has started now with our earliest learners, and we're dealing with significant issues at times with students as young as preschool and kindergarten. So it's really stretched the barriers to their learning in a K-12 environment to a much broader set of students. And this really cuts across all socioeconomic lines, all types of backgrounds, and it creates an impact for learning for kids across the entire spectrum now.
All right, so before we get to you, Superintendent Weber, I do want to ask you as a follow-up there, Superintendent Edoff, what exactly do the counselors that you guys have in the school districts now do for folks who might not be so familiar?
Sure. So our mental health program uses a variety of different professionals, including counselors and social workers and nurses actually as well, all of which were helped and supported by the grant that you discussed in the introduction. All of those individuals used to have very specified caseloads of individuals, of students that were assigned to them and they only worked with specifically. Now they provide all sorts of emergency services. They do background, they do assessments, safety assessments on these students, and they refer out to outside counseling and other mental health services when needed. But frequently they are checking in and working with students and entire families as part of their daily work.
Superintendent Weber, looping you into the conversation, are you seeing the same things there in Northville? And can you let us know what you're concerned about if you were to lose the amount of staffing that you currently have for mental health?
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you. This money is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. I was in one of our elementary schools this morning. In that same space I was in approximately a month ago, we had to do a suicide evaluation on a kindergartner. A suicide evaluation on a kindergartner. We had 67 suicide risk and threat evaluations just in kindergarten through fifth grade last year alone. I think folks who don't do the work Erik and I do might not understand the level of need that we have. To think that a $240 million appropriation could go away, and Erik has some great information on how we keep that, is something that I have a hard time living with, frankly. I think as society, how we feel about our kids is indicated by the amount of resources and money and where we spend on them.
You said on a kindergartner?
Yes, sir.
Is that something that you're saying, but for the funding that we had, that's normally something that would slip through the cracks?
What I'm saying is that to think in any way, shape, or form that we need less support for our K through 12 students is intellectually lazy.
So when we look at specifically what you're talking about in terms of these interventions, in terms of like funding, for example, do you have a proposal then on how we would fund something like that? Because we did know that this funding was going to be temporary, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of it did come from DARPA dollars and things like that, which we all knew were going away. So was there a plan in place then, or how would we deal with that?
Yeah, I think Erik and I have a couple good things. I'll start with the fact that the school aid fund, which was set up for K-12 schools, and then has been giving money to universities that can actually charge tuition. Erik and I can't charge our families more money for kids to come. So significant amounts of money going into universities that was never intended to. And I don't mean to annoy my brothers and sisters out there in higher ed, but the need that Erik and I have K-12 is real. And Erik, I know you have something else.
Yes, there is opportunity. Just like with anything, we're trying to solve problems, and frequently we encounter situations where funding changes or funding runs out. We did understand that 3 years ago when we entered into this agreement, and I think two responses to that. One is I really thought that 3 years sounded like a good time frame for students to recover from COVID. I think we thought 3 years would be a sufficient amount of time and that we'd see improvement of these types of mental health issues, and that just was not the case and is not the case. We've seen continued struggles and, in fact, I would say increased struggles over the past 3 years. But on a positive note, one of the solutions we have, which is, I think, pretty profound and could be transformational, is that we have been paying over and above for retiree health care and retiree pensions for quite a long time. And we've been paying that so that the system is protected and that our retirees in those systems receive health care and retirement benefits. And a study this winter showed that the health care portion of that was funded at now 120%. So the paying it off has worked, and we now have additional funds that we do not need to spend in order to continue that program for our employees. That being said, right now, this does not require a new appropriation. We do not need new money from the state of Michigan in order to see a very increased stream of revenue for us going forward into next year's budget if we simply reduce that extra amount we've been paying into that system. So, again, receiving that same per pupil amount that RJ discussed, but then not sending a portion of it back to the state like we have been doing is one legitimate solution to backfilling this money that's expiring this year and keep these staffing levels higher.
You know, Superintendent Weber, you used the phrase, you don't want to be intellectually lazy about this, and I don't either. So I do have some questions that I want to bring up. But before we get specifically to those, as we probe this issue, I do want to give you an opportunity, and both of you, again, as people who have been there, I know you're not necessarily like experts who have been running a bunch of numbers in a broad sense on this, but from your experience that you've seen, do you have any ideas that what might be behind this cause if it's something that we're seeing now but we weren't seeing earlier?
Yeah, I could offer a couple of pieces. So I'm speaking to you with a lived experience of being a patient at the U of M Depression Center myself a number of years ago for a couple of years. I've lived with anxiety and depression through my entire life, and I would argue that these issues have been existent for time immemorial. I believe that as we become more open about it, we are seeing the need elevate. And I also believe COVID, without a doubt, isolated and harmed students and adults, frankly, that were in that situation. You know, people look for the why on things, and I appreciate that, and that's how we can prevent. But the business Erik and I are in on a day-to-day basis is what do we do to advocate for our kids to amplify their beautiful voices? There's not a third grader sitting at this table. How do we in our positions provide what they need now rather than trying to figure out the why? The numbers I gave you are real. For the past 5 years, all we've seen is an increase each year in the amount of services needed by our kids. So, Nick, I don't know. I can't put a finger on everything, but what I can tell you, it's here. It's also a school safety issue, Erik. I think the piece of there's the infrastructure part, which we're really grateful for the legislature giving us money for. But real school safety is about relationships and building those relationships and having talented mental health professionals in our spaces.
And, you know, I just want to throw in a question here to you, Graham, here. But, RJ, we talked a little bit earlier, and you talked about how mental health does not have a
zip code.
Yeah. It doesn't have a zip code. It doesn't have a color. It doesn't have a face. It doesn't have, it just, it attacks whoever. It impacts whoever it's going to impact. So just talk about that, you know, attacking mental health at all spaces, in all areas, at all levels, even if it may not seem like there'd be an issue going on.
Absolutely. Mental health addiction knows no boundary, no zip code. There's not an easy formula to say kids are hurting or adults are hurting in this community or not. And we have to be honest about that. Tia, there is no way when I was at my worst spot in my life that you would ever know it. I was teacher of the year, principal of the year. When I opened up about what I was going through, people could not believe it. And I think of how many, I'm not unique, I think of how many people are out there, the employees we have, the kids we serve, that need this support. And I truly can't think of a more essential spend. And as Erik just said, he just gave you the pathway of how to fund it. The answer's there.
Yeah, the answers are right there, Nick.
Yeah, well, no, but the question would be, is it an efficient way of doing it? And as we're speaking again with Superintendents Erik Edoff and Superintendent R.J. Weber, the reason why I bring it up is because you also mentioned that this is something that you personally, bringing up your story, had been struggling with earlier. So the question would be, are the numbers really increasing, or have we just paid more attention so we have a better assessment of what's happening there? Why do I bring this up? You mentioned the story of the kindergartner, but I haven't seen any numbers unless you tell me something that suicides amongst kindergartners are up, right? Because they don't normally get to act on something like that. So the question would be, what is the best way for us to deal with this? There are concerns that by bringing it up so much in all of these places that some have expressed, maybe it's causing more ideations and maybe causing more harm. So the question is, what is the best way for us to do it? Maybe sometimes some would say, being out there in the real world, dealing with in a safer environment will allow you to learn how to cope.
What I'll say, Nick, really quickly is, and I think Erik had a great point off air that I'm sure he's going to want to bring up. But what I'll say is I went through a significant amount of training on the Columbia Suicide Risk Assessment Protocol with New York Presbyterian Hospital, a former district I served, and the research is unequivocal that talking about these things does not increase the numbers. So if we could please stop bringing stuff like that up. In the way I was brought up, you would not talk to anybody about it for fear of they would actually follow through. That is not the case. And I think the quicker that we can go towards addressing what is real and understanding that, the better. But I think, Erik, you'd mentioned something about what we've become.
Yeah, I think two things that are fairly significant here are, number one, schools have become more of a community-based wraparound service as time has gone on. And despite funding challenges and staffing challenges, the demand continues on schools to solve a lot of issues and create solutions outside of our traditional walls. And I think that this is a great example of that. many of the reasons why these issues come into our schools occur from social media, occur from family dynamic issues, have occurred from COVID. There are a number of causes, but in reality, they all create barriers to learning for our students. So whatever the issue may be, whether it be significant or insignificant, that is a child that's not ready to learn that day. That's a child that's not paying attention to what our core service is and should be. Yeah. So we have to, just like with any other remediation program, we have to assist with that, or that student is going to fall behind academically as well.
Yeah, could talk to you forever. Only got about 30 seconds. That's why not trying to be real short. But then, is the school the best place for us to be doing all of this, right? Sometimes we lump too much on the police, and they would say, hey, that's not what our role should be. Maybe schools should be for learning. Should we create another support avenue to assist with this, or do you think the schools are best equipped for it?
So think about it, Nick. Our community public schools are centers of community. I don't care where you are in the state of Michigan, there's a community public school system, and who do they serve? They serve the kids. I think the locus of that, we're in a great spot, but to Erik's point, the resources for us to be able to do it all, we need them.
Correct.
All right. Well, we're going to have to end it there, gentlemen, but I do appreciate your time. Erik Edoff, Superintendent for Lance Creuse Schools, and R.J. Weber, Superintendent for Northville Public Schools. Thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate
Be well.
it.
Bye-bye.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET, and coming up, we'll discuss the opening of a state-of-the-art sports complex in Brighton. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. And for those of you who are familiar with Netflix, maybe you watch Netflix, maybe you don't, but the Netflix show Last Chance U, you know that many student athletes they may want to go to D1 schools. They often struggle to get into those programs, but we have a solution possibly. A first-of-its-kind program in Michigan is trying to help those athletes, specifically those who have recently graduated from high school and are trying to make it as top college athletes. The Lead Prep Academy does this, and recently they signed an educational partnership with Washtenaw Community College, and they are set to open a state-of-the-art sports complex in Brighton, about 40 minutes away from the community college. To talk more about the sports complex and this program, we have Erik Fagursky here. He is the Lead Prep Academy's athletic director. Erik, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro today.
Thank you for having me.
And then we have Linda Blakey. Blakey is Washtenaw Community College she is a Washtenaw Community College Provost and Chief Operating Officer. Linda, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. So Erik, what's the Lead Prep Academy?
The Lead Prep Academy is a new junior college football program based at the Legacy Center in Brighton, Michigan. We also offer a postgraduate year right out of high school that will allow students to participate fully in a full national football schedule without burning a year of eligibility, which is unique to us.
Which is one of the really things I wanted to get into, because when I saw that, I thought, wow, kids can actually still go into school with their first year of eligibility. You know, they're not losing that year. So why did you guys decide to build that into the program?
Well, in the era of the transfer portal, name, image, and likeness, and really COVID, those are three once-in-a-generation changes that occurred, all while these students were doing their 4 years of high school. So this program is designed to meet the needs of the student athletes in this time. When you talk about the transfer portal, you have the four-year colleges aren't looking to develop the way that they used to. There's also a higher expectation that you perform right when you get onto campus. And so by giving students a year to develop, get exposure, they have an opportunity to come in full swing. And then also with the name, image, and likeness, these 4 years that they have at that level are more valuable than they've ever been. So why would you burn a year when you don't have to? And that's what we've structured the program to be able to do.
I love it. It's like a wraparound system, kind of helping. I always think when when high school freshmen go into school, they kind of have that little period when they're a little nervous. They don't know what to do, even freshmen in college. So this kind of gives people a little chance to just figure it out, breathe a little bit, and get their legs underneath them. So when we think about student athletes, especially student athletes who are going in and hoping to get into a D1 school or larger universities, what makes really good players? How do they get to those larger schools?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Last Chance U because I was the athletic director at Independence Community College.
Shut up.
Yeah, for 4 years. I'm from Michigan originally, grew up in Redford, went to high school in Farmington, and I had a chance to come back home and really bring that model to back home to Detroit, to Michigan. So each kid has a different story, and that's what makes it so great. Some are kids that didn't handle their business in high school academically, and that's the majority of them. And that's where partnering with somebody like Washtenaw is great because they have the services that allow us to really support them in that effort. Some are transfers, like I said, with the transfer portal, the movement that's occurring in college football right now is more than ever. And so we do accept transfers into our program as well. It's not just first-year freshmen. Nice. Others, just didn't get the exposure or didn't develop in high school the way that they thought. And like I said, back to that transfer portal. High school recruitment's down. So there are so many really good, talented football players that took care of everything they needed to do and just didn't get that opportunity, or they didn't get the opportunity that they wanted. So this allows them to come in, bet on themselves a little bit, and ultimately get to the destination they desire.
Nice. So, Linda, bringing you into the conversation, why did you all at Washtenaw Community College want to get involved with this program and want to actually, move forward with this?
Well, again, we offer great academic programming. We meet students where they are. And we serve Livingston County, even though we're a Washtenaw college. Actually, the Legacy Center is only about 20 minutes from the college. And so we already have a lot of classes and students who take classes from Livingston County. And it was a great opportunity for us to partner with a premier sports center, but offer the academic classes that these athletes need. And again, we meet students where they are. We have affordable, quality classes. We also offer classes in different modes, online, virtual, in-person, so it'll best meet the needs of the athletes.
And, we talked about Last Chance U a little bit. I see some of that in the filming of Last Chance U on Netflix, where you see this wraparound type of communal type of give and take with the tutors and the teachers and the professors and academic advisors and the whole thing. Is that something that you all are going to try to do as well?
Yes, we do that for all of our students. So premier academic advising, we have free tutoring, we have success coaches that help the students with any kind of barriers they might be facing. And so we can help students, be successful in their academic pursuits.
And the same thing with you, Linda. Just thinking about getting into WCC. What's the scholarships, funding? What does that look like for student athletes?
So those students, they're eligible for any scholarships that we have available. We have high school scholarships. They're also they will be applying for financial aid. They're high school graduates, and so any kind of funding or scholarships that are available to any of our other students will be available to these students as well.
And Erik, I'm thinking about, of course, we just talked a little bit about just the program and some of your background. And I just think about the student athletes themselves, and you talked a little bit about them having, just their struggles getting to where they want to be. Describe some of the people or some of the students that you all are going to have coming into the fall, 2024?
Yep.
Yeah.
So 2024 fall will be our first season. We're targeting local area students. We're definitely trying to win the state of Detroit and expand out to Michigan, and there's also a national need for this. But with the NFL draft coming up, I'm thinking about 4 kids that came through Independence Community College that are going to be having an opportunity to be drafted this year. So Kamal Haddon out of River Rouge High School went out to Indy, and he's got a shot to get drafted. Tyrese Knight, Jeremy Flax from Robichaud, he went to Kentucky. And then the 4th is slipping my mind, but
he's going to be at the end of the draft no matter what. Thursday night he'll be there.
Jamoy Hodge. Shout out to Jamoy. He's a kid from North Carolina that came through Independence, went to TCU, and all 4 of them, like I said, have an opportunity to live their dream, and it's really cool this week being here in Detroit for it.
Exactly. Before I let you go, because we're pushing up on time here, but I'm seeing the light come into your eyes when you talk about some of the players, especially the players that you were with and connected to at Independence. What is it like bringing this home? You're at home now. Yeah. So what is it like just having this type of impact or possible impact you're going to have being home?
Yeah, it's definitely personal. It's something that, I believe in. I learned from a lot of great people out at Independence, and to have a chance to come home and do it here with the support of, the Legacy Center, the LEAD Foundation, which is, really the driver of this whole thing. That's our 501c3 nonprofit, and they've been engaged in the community, Cleats for Kids, things of that nature for 10 plus years. And so this is an extension of that. and just have a chance to be a part of it is special.
It's so amazing, too. We had a conversation earlier with Jerome Bettis, not former, but Hall of Fame running back, and just continuing on this conversation about sports and football and the importance of having services and a bridge for kids to actually get to the places they want to go. So thank you both so much for being here. We have Erik Fagursky, the lead Prep Academy athletic director, and Linda Blakey. Blakey is the Washtenaw Community College provost and chief operating officer. That is a mouthful there, but it's a beautiful title.
Thank you for helping us.
Yes.
Thank you for having
so
us
much.
today.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin. That was Tia Graham. And as we move from the world of student athletes to those making their living professionally, unions are very important. And last fall, the United Automobile Workers Union won big pay increases from the Detroit automakers. The result impacted the South, where a slate of automakers raised wages for their hourly non-unionized workers. On Friday, there was more good news for U.S. union workers. The majority of 4,300 workers at the Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee, overwhelmingly voted to join the UAW. But despite the excitement in the union world, there have also been setbacks. In recent months, Stellantis and GM fired hundreds of workers at their facilities. What's more, by 2023, there were 190,000 more people represented by a union, but the percentage of union workers declined from 11.3 to 11.2%. So what does all this information mean for union members in our city and around the country? And how should we be interpreting the big contracts UAW members at the big three auto companies receive now? To discuss this, we have Merrick Masters with us. He is the chair of the Department of Finance at Wayne State University and a professor of management and adjunct professor of political science. Merrick, thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start here. What did you make of this vote that happened in Tennessee, and what does it mean for those organizing unions across the South?
Well, it's a significant step, a continuation of the UAW's momentum, which started with Shawn Fain's inauguration last March, was accelerated by the record contracts on the heels of the successful stand-up strikes and the launch of the campaign to organize 13 non-union companies. This is the first election that's been held under that campaign. It is a reversal of fortune, so to speak, in that UAW won this by a lopsided majority, over 70%, in an election that it lost several years ago at Chattanooga. And they now have pending in May an election at the Vance, Alabama site of Mercedes-Benz with about 5,000 workers. I would anticipate that they have a good chance of winning that election as well.
And, you mentioned this momentum around unions. People do seem to want them, according to the polling I've seen, but we're not necessarily seeing a lot of that coming to fruition. So with the percentage of union workers going down, how should we reconcile this information in your estimation?
Well, I think you have to reconcile it by taking a look at the very small numbers that are involved. For example, at Starbucks, where you've had hundreds of elections take place, most of the units are just a handful of people, and overall you only have 8,000 workers. And it's important to remember you have a workforce of about 150 million people. So unions are just 10% of the workforce. It's going to take orders of magnitude greater in terms of organizing for them to offset the layoffs and natural turnover that occurs in the year because of retirements and other forms of downsizing.
Yeah, and some of that downsizing could be layoffs, which we've seen at the Big Three in recent months. Let's talk about messaging and marketing. How many of those workers were union, and how much of that was tied to what the UAW workers won?
Well, in terms of the layoffs, so at the Big Three, those workers are unionized workers. When you look at other companies that are announcing layoffs, such as Rivian and Tesla, they're non-union workers. But I think that raises an important point, and that is the transition to EVs is more difficult. You have the threat of China entering our market with low-cost EVs. They are ahead of us in terms of production of EVs and their technology in terms of developing them. So I think the world is very uncertain right now, and the non-union companies are not going to sit by idly and let the UAW walk in. They're going to step up their game, and I would anticipate that this may be low-hanging fruit, and it will be difficult for the UAW to organize more of the remaining transplants that are non-union.
You know, Michigan was the first state to repeal its right-to-work laws, but that means we have several elsewhere and even in Michigan, state workers still can't avail themselves of that benefit. What do we need in terms of legislation to make that happen? Is that something in the way, and are we seeing with this push-up a path forward to actually changing legislation so maybe unions can have more power, not only nationwide, but also here locally?
Well, as you mentioned, any state can rescind its right-to-work law if it so chooses. At the national level, there's legislation pending before Congress that would prohibit right-to-work laws across the country. I don't think that has much chance of passing as it stands, but it's a goal to aspire to, and if you were to have substantial Democratic control of the Congress, you might get it in the future. But I think short of that, it's important to realize that even without right-to-work laws, organizing is very difficult. Employers can resort to the same playbook that they have always, using the leverage under the National Labor Relations Act to oppose unions, and they have very formidable powers to do so.
Yeah, Erik Masters, chair of the Department of Finance at Wayne State University and professor of management at the school. Thanks so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Coming up, we'll discuss land contracts and why they can be predatory for prospective homeowners. You all stay right there.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Now, affordable housing is top of mind of many Detroiters following the mayor's State of the City address last week. While the mayor touted rising property values in his speech, access to affordable housing and home ownership remain a struggle for far too many. Land contracts were considered a way to make it easier for people to purchase a home. But according to a new report, they can also be unfair to buyers. Joshua Akers is the research manager at the Mid-America Regional Council. He is also co-author of the report Judged by Their Deeds, published in the journal Housing Policy Debate. He spoke to Stephen Henderson on Created Equal about the dangers of predatory land contracts.
You know, there are some land contracts between individuals that we saw have success, but with larger contract sellers, the people that buy in bulk and use this as a business model, of the major companies we looked at, one had a 5% success rate. The vast majority of them were much lower than that. One local land contract seller had a 0.5% success rate on those contracts.
The idea of a land contract seems like a viable alternative to the mortgage process. There are very few mortgages that generally are issued in the city, and so land contracts were another way to get more people to be owners. What's going wrong that prevents that from happening?
If we think back, for those of us that are old enough, to 2008, right? Those were very trying times, not only across the country, but particularly in the city of Detroit. You had a large number of Black families that ended up in subprime mortgages in the early 2000s. You had huge numbers of foreclosures throughout the city and throughout Southeast Michigan. You had a large reorganization of the automakers and closure of tool and die manufacturers. So you have an economy in upheaval. On top of that, one of the responses to the mortgage crisis at the federal level was to tighten credit restrictions, right? So it gets really difficult for a lot of people in need of housing who may have lost their housing during that period in time or may need credit to get access. At the same time, it created a huge volume of properties being sold at deep discounts. Mm-hmm. And a lot of businesses arose out of that across the country, particularly these contract sellers. And what they did is target bulk properties being offered by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac trying to get foreclosures off their books, or bulk properties being offered by Wayne County, the Wayne County Treasurer in tax foreclosure. And then they would turn around and kind of triage these properties. The properties they could sell or flip immediately, they would. And others, they turned to this land contract business model. And the idea was that you could get people into these properties quite quickly, not pay taxes or do any improvements on them, and cash out as fast as you could.
So what happens when this goes wrong and buyers don't end up with the home?
For the buyers, it's kind of the worst case scenario. You take your savings that you have and maybe you borrow from some friends and you put together the relatively large down payment that's often 3 to 10 times what the investor paid for the property, just right there. On top of that, you end up in a home that needs all kinds of repairs. You may not have a hot water heater. You may have a leaking sewer. You may not have electrical wiring, right? But that belief that it's going to be your home, encourages you to keep putting money into it. So you make a pretty big financial investment out of limited means. At the same time, as soon as you miss a payment or any component of that, those contracts often turn you into month-to-month renters, and the owner will file for eviction. So for the contract buyer, right, they've lost a huge amount of a limited amount of capital that they had. On the other hand, for the city and for the county, what you see is often these contract sellers are not paying taxes. They're not taking care of distressed properties. And if the contract buyer can't keep up, they end up back within the public holdings and oftentimes demolished. These contracts are designed to fail. My co-author and I, Erik Seymour, have been looking at this issue for nearly a decade now. And there's been tremendous upheaval in the investor-owner market, particularly in the last few years. But contract sellers remain quite active. They have significant volumes of property that they're operating on. And groups like Lakeshore and UCHC see them every day in eviction court.
That was Joshua Akers, research manager at Mid-America Regional Council, discussing the dangers of predatory land contracts and their impact on homeownership in the housing market in Detroit. You can hear more of the conversation with Stephen Henderson online at WDET.org or by searching for the Created Equal podcast on your favorite platform. This is The Metro.
It is the Metro, Tia, on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin, and it's Earth Day. For Earth Day, President Biden announced $7 billion will be made available for solar energy panels for low and middle income communities. The grants are being managed by the Environmental Protection Agency. The grants will allow the installation of solar panels at 900,000 plus homes. I can't wait to spend my $7 billion on my solar energy panel, Tia.
But we need them. Earth Day. And speaking of Earth Day, the city of Detroit will use a robot to clean up litter on Belle Isle Beach. The Office of Mobility Innovation will demonstrate how the machine works today. It's programmed to remove plastic waste from the beach. So it's Earth Day. Let's just make sure we're keeping our planet safe. It's our only planet. It's the only one we got.
I kind of like this idea of Roombas running around on beaches, even like Belle Isle, cleaning up stuff automatically.
If it just talks to you too. Hey, I see you, litterer.
Yeah.
Hey.
Maybe that could be the way, whatever. When a robot does it, it feels a little bit more official, I guess. I'm not sure.
I'm not going to hold you up. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
To think about a robot yelling at you. It's just like, oh, where are we now? This is the Matrix?
Whatever it takes, man. Just keep the places clean. And I want you to do that as well for Earth Day. Everybody out there, please make sure to celebrate. Of course, the draft is also coming up this weekend, and we are going to be covering it here at WDET. So make sure you're locked in with us all week as we are looking forward to getting you prepared for NFL Draft Weekend right here in Detroit, Tia. I know you're excited.
I'm super excited. Thursday, it actually starts up. Thursday will be sunny with a high near 56 degrees. Not at night, it won't. So make sure you pack a blanket or a coat or something because it's going to be chilly that night. But that's the Metro for Monday, April 22nd. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Our engineer is Nate Bender.
The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at wdet.org/donate.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.